Did you know that Marvel Comics was not actually the first publisher to introduce superheroes to the world? Did you also know that some of their most popular characters have secret origins tied to pulp magazines? Well, if you want to learn all about how Marvel got their start, keep watching till the end. Greetings, Nerd Squad. It's me, and today we're going to take a look at how Marvel Comics began. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. One in March 1941. At the time, this period in North American history is known as the Comics Crunch. This led to mass layoffs among comic book companies, and Timely was no exception. Lee had actually worked for Timely since 1941 as an assistant. He had been promoted several times, but around this point, he didn't really believe that there was much of a future in comics, so he accepted a position writing for other media. However, following the death of his brother and the departure of many talented individuals from the industry, Lee decided to return to comics. Well, a lot of them were created simply to be foils for the good guys, serving as obstacles for them to overcome. But some were given more depth. The Green Goblin, for instance, wasn't just a random villain. He was the alter ego of Norman Osborn, the CEO of Oscorp and a wealthy philanthropist who became consumed with envy for Spider-Man's abilities. His obsession ultimately led to his downfall. Then there was Dr. Doom. Unlike most supervillains, Doom was highly intelligent. He was also honorable, even when facing his greatest enemy, the Fantastic Four. This was because Doom was a monarch. He ruled over the fictional country of Latveria and was known for being fair and just to his people. Martin Goodman then sold the company to a man named Saul Brodsky. Which era of Marvel do you prefer? Classic or modern? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on any of our awesome content. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and happy reading. Together, they brought back the Human Torch and the Hulk, who was originally known as Mr. Immortal. They gave the superhero Captain America a new costume, updated his origin story, and made him a member of a covert government task force. For example, Spider-Man fought against the Draft during the Vietnam War. The Fantastic Four faced off against the Green Goblin, who was a metaphor for the U.S. government, and Doctor Strange battled the villain Nightmare, who represented drug addiction. Soon after, Lee and Kirby were joined by another former Timely employee, Steve Ditko, and together the trio would change the face of comics forever. Around this time, the company began focusing on romance comics and crime dramas, titles that were not affected by the Comics Code. Timely's characters were flawed, ordinary people with problems that their readers could relate to. For example, Peter Parker was an orphan who lived with his Aunt May and was often bullied by his peers. Bruce Wayne, on the other hand, was a rich kid who had everything money could buy. The difference, of course, being that Peter Parker went on to become Spider-Man and Bruce Wayne became Batman. Other examples include the Fantastic Four, who, despite being treated like royalty by most of the world, had to deal with the fact that they were mutants, and the X-Men, who were feared and hated for the same reason. One example was a romance comic called Young Romance, which featured a young couple whose love is put to the test. What a shocker. The cover of issue number 7 shows a kiss between two teenagers. And although this might seem innocent enough today, the Comics Code forbade any depiction of kissing. Fortunately, the comic was able to circumvent the ban by including text above the lovers that said they are not brother and sister. A lot of people have written to me asking me to make a video on this, so consider this your advanced notice. I am working on it. I just have so many projects at the moment. It's hard to keep track. It's good to see that you're keeping up with my work though. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was believed that the United States would soon be entering the war, so Goodman wanted a patriotic superhero to appeal to young readers. And I think it's safe to say that mission accomplished. There was also the Destroyer, who bore a striking resemblance to Conan the Barbarian. And the comic even referenced Conan. By Roy Thomas in an author's note at the back of the book, the comic established that the Destroyer came from a far-off land known as Kumari, a clear nod to Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age. However, unlike Conan, the Destroyer was not a savage warrior. but rather a meek museum curator who could transform into a fierce fighter whenever he wished. Timely Publications was founded by Martin Goodman in 1939, who had previously owned a magazine publishing company called Timely Comics. He, too, had actually debuted in a previous issue of another Timely publication called Motion Picture Funnies. But in Marvel Comics #1, he is referred to as Namor the Submariner. That name change was actually the first alteration made to the character when he was brought over to Marvel. Namor was created by Bill Everett and was initially depicted as a hero. Originally, he was just known as the Submariner, but after the character was sold to Marvel Comics, he became an anti-hero instead. The reason for this change was because the Comics Code Authority prohibited the depiction of characters that had superpowers but were still considered villains. He was now a mutant, a member of an advanced race of underwater beings known as the Hidden Nation of Atlantis. So Everett changed Namor's backstory. As a result, Namor's powers were explained away as being those of a mutant rather than a villain. Yeah, real original name, right? Anyway, at first, the company was primarily focused on publishing romance novels. However, after seeing the success of Fun Comics, which were published by competitors at the time, DC Comics, Goodman decided to establish a new comics division under Timely. The first comic book published under the Timely banner was Marvel Comics #1 in October 1939. The anthology featured a variety of stories with different characters, but there was one story in particular that would become very important in the future. In the comic, readers were introduced to the Human Torch, a superhero with the power to control fire, and his robot companion, a Tin Man. These characters had originally appeared in a story called The Mystery of the Human Torch that had been published in the magazine called Pep in October 1938. So they weren't brand new creations. But the version of the Human Torch created for Marvel Comics would go on to become the most well-known. Also included in that first issue was a supervillain named the Submariner. Timely continued to publish various characters during World War II, such as Captain America in his very first appearance, Captain America Comics No. Following the end of World War II, Timely experienced a decline in popularity. Anyway, the main reason for the decline in the comics industry was due to the introduction of the Comics Code in 1954. In the early 1960s, a new editor joined Timely, a man named Stanley Martin Lieber, better known to us as Stan Lee. After Lee was appointed editor, he reached out to former Timely employee Jack Kirby and asked him to help modernize some of the older characters for a new audience. What set these comics apart from those of their competitors at DC was that instead of only featuring perfect heroes, another way in which Marvel differed from DC was that they focused on real-world issues that people were actually concerned about, whereas DC dealt with more fantastical ideas that were based on mythology. But what about the bad guys? How did Marvel come up with those? So there you have it, the origins of Marvel Comics.